So invite some people to the live. Let them know. I'm talking about the ginger stuff. Are gingers black? And I'm getting updated on this discourse now, and it's pretty wild. And of course, it went the direction that you would expect it to go on TikTok, which is like, oh my God, this amazing thing happened, and then it just sort of is going left at this point, where you got some inappropriate redheads that are now trying to jump on this trend and taking it out of context, and racist stuff happening. And now you got black folks clapping back, going, "Who's inviting y'all to the cookout?" And she's Louise. Yeah, it's a lot. So I want to have the conversation with a ginger. Somebody says I'm a ginger, but not a weird one. Thank you for not being weird. It's really cool when certain folks they just get it. Yeah, it's very interesting when people, to see the folks who get it kind of are in on the joke, or not joke, but are in on the, the conversation, and the folks who just immediately go to this like crash out place where now there have to be all these response videos that just kind of attempt to straighten people out. It's always nice when something that's fun just stays fun. And I felt like there was a part of this conversation that was fun, and it was kind of cool. So yeah, I want to talk this out. My brother-in-law, like I said, is a ginger. And hearing this from his point of view is very interesting. He's been married to my sister for, oh God, over 25 years. So I've had a ginger brother-in-law for a long time, for a very long time. Sending love to the UK. Thank you, Cash. Okay, there he is. Can I invite him? I think I got him. If he accepts my invite, the ginger of the hour, whose name is CE, he'll be right back. And he's got a really interesting life arc, a really interesting story, and just a really interesting point of view, just coming from his background with a lot of family members of his that, he's from Henrietta, Oklahoma. I don't think I need to say any more. So yeah, his mom kind of kept him in like a lot of black circles coming up. But then to hear his conversations that happened with his mom later on, even considering the fact that she was, around black folks all the time, they've still gone in some interesting ways. So yeah, but I spend a lot of time on Instagram. So follow me over there at Dara Tucker B if you actually want to see my posts, because Instagram does show people my posts. Yeah, Instagram is the place. My older sister, Dolly, she's only 10 and a half months older than me. She's my Irish twin, ironically enough. Okay, there's C. Oh, you're there.
I'm here.
Okay. All right, CE, we have a ginger live and in person. We found one in the wild. And
in the wild is crazy.
This is my brother-in-law, and his name is CE Spaulding, and he's been married. How long have you and Dolly been married, my sister?
28 wonderful years.
Oh my God, you guys are old. I'm not old, but y'all are old.
28 years and 7 children.
7 children.
Yeah.
It's been an interesting journey for sure.
Oh yeah.
And
for sure.
I've seen a lot of growth. I mean, I've grown over the years. I've seen a lot of growth in CE over the years, and he's been through his own journey with issues of race and all of that stuff. So I just kind of want to, can I get your assessment, CE, of just this conversation around, gingers are black people? I'm sure everyone has heard this quote unquote discourse on TikTok over the last few days. There was a black creator, something about root. She's like a root worker or something. That's in her name. Just kind of making this blanket statement that gingers are black people, and this is just it. If you're a ginger, and she names some other groups too, but the ginger thing, redheads, that just took off. The idea that redheads or gingers were black. And there wasn't a whole lot of basis that she provided for it. I went back and watched a follow-up video that she did, and she ended up saying something about them being connected to like a Haitian god or a goddess or something like that. It was just kind of off the wall. And then I watched one creator who was basically just trying to explain the recessive gene that causes redheadedness. I don't think there's really any basis for scientifically or genetically saying that gingers are connected to Black people. I think this is really just more, it's a spiritual conversation that's being had, you know.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
yeah, kind of yeah. What do you make of all of this, CE?
Well, when I first heard about it, it was just a couple of days ago. I was on TikTok and I hadn't had a lot of time to be on TikTok lately. And so I got on there, and one of the first videos I see is people saying, "I'm so glad to know that gingers are Black people," and they're crying. And I was like, what is going on? So I didn't put a whole lot of energy into it. I just thought it was something that would pass, and then I asked Dolly later, I was like, have you seen this thing on TikTok where they're talking about redheads or gingers or Black people? And she's like, yeah, I heard about it. I've seen a lot of videos, people were crying, and I saw people, just being funny. And then I saw one where somebody was saying something kind of inappropriate, and I thought, oh, here we go. And
Yeah.
then that's when I kind of stopped paying attention to it, because I didn't want to be, hey, Dr. Giovanni, I didn't want to be part of the foolishness, and that's when I kind of discounted it when people, because I know, I saw one video that you showed me earlier where somebody said, you give them an inch, they're going to take a mile. And so I've been waiting for the inappropriateness.
Right.
And, so now I've seen it. And it's frustrating. But, yeah, so I'm not putting a lot of stock in it. I'm not saying, oh, finally, we're invited to the cookout and all that stuff. I've seen on this funny, but, let's just keep it appropriate.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess how seriously do you take it? How do you take it? When you hear that, how does that land with you? I mean, I kind of take it, I guess, in good humor. I just take it humorously. Like, I'm not upset about it. A lot of people seem to be like, oh, you invite these folk. And I definitely understand in the context of like, okay, we're having this broad conversation with a bunch of random folks on the internet. Some crazy stuff, like you just said, is going to happen. Mm-hmm. Somebody's going to take it too far, which, the one guy with the curly hair, the redhead with the curly hair, has been on here saying racist crap, just using it as an opening for whatever. Yeah. But, how do you take that? And how did it hit you initially, I guess, when you started hearing the conversation?
Well, like I said, it was just kind of like, okay, this is funny. Haha, and just, that's what I took when I first heard it. It was like they're being funny, but then I started realizing people were taking this seriously, and trying to make this real connection. So I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it at first, and then as I started hearing more stuff, it was like, I don't want to be part of the foolishness,
right?
But lightheartedness, or funny, or even the people that are feeling love. I as a ginger, I experienced bullying as a kid. I'd rather be dead than red on the head, or they call us carrot top, which we all would say, that's dumb. Carrot tops are green, kind of thing. And try to come back at that. So, we got bullied, and I had lots of freckles, and hey, let me get my marker and we'll play connect the freckles. But not to be compared with, the bullying and the racism and the journey of Black people. So I struggle when people start comparing that, because they're not even on the same, playing field. And I have family. I was talking to you earlier about my own mother, who made a comparison between her children, because I have a sister who's 10 years older than me, who has hair just like mine, but her hair is real long and real thick and very red. And she was bullied, I guess. And so mom made a comparison between my sister being bullied as a child for having red hair and freckles to Black people and racism. And I looked at my mother and I said, Mom, you can't compare that, because no one has ever lost their life for being redheaded or been denied housing or civil rights or lynched because they had red hair. That's not the same thing. And you know, she was in her 80s, but it's still, I was just appalled that she made that comparison. And, you know, we had a very in-depth conversation after that. And yeah, that was not okay. So I don't like to see where it's going with the racism. And bullying is real. Don't misunderstand me. Bullying is real, but you can't compare that to the journey when we start talking about Black people's journey, you
Yeah.
know, and what they've been through. I just think it's in ignorant taste to compare them, and even say that they're, you know, close to being the same thing, because they're not.
Yeah. I think, you know, there's the part of it that's kind of a lighthearted joke. There's the part of it that is like actually touching when you see these so-called gingers coming through your feed, literally crying. And I guess most of them are sincere. I'm guessing that they're not just, you know, trying to jump on a trend. At least the ones that I saw, it felt sincere to me that there was this affirmation that was coming. And I will say, in all of this back and forth, I have not seen any of these affirmative videos from the Black community. I only ever saw that one girl who said gingers are redheads. And then I saw a bunch of redheads being funneled through my feed that were saying, oh, this is so affirming. All of these Black people have been sending all this love. I haven't seen any of the Black people sending the love. Has anyone else? Let me know in the comments if you have seen Black people sending love. Dr. Josh, PhD, LMFT. I think my sister's an LMFT. Not licensed marriage and family therapy. I guess that's what that means, but she's a licensed therapist. I find at least 3 times per week to tell someone that my sister Diamond is a licensed therapist. But he says that there was a potential learning moment about white supremacy, but instead, I mean, you know, there's a small handful of people who will always ruin anything that feels, you know, like it's bringing people together, creating understanding. There's a joke, there's something really cool or interesting happening. There's always going to be somebody or some small group of people who just have to poo-poo it, who have to just drop a turd in the middle of it. And that's just the nature of online stuff. Yeah. But yeah, I have noticed, like I said, I have not seen any of these videos where Black people are like, yes, welcome to the fold. Have you seen any of those videos, CE?
Not the ones I've seen. No, it's all the ones I've seen. I'm trying to think. Most
Cloud
of them,
says, I just keep seeing white redheads hyping themselves up. No Black confirmation. Yeah, I haven't seen.
Right. Same thing. Same thing. And then I just, before I came on tonight, I saw a Black gentleman going, what were y'all doing to the gingers? They're right here crying. You know, I was like, right. What was that been through? Right. So I was like, I don't know. But I mean, I have experiences with the love. People talk about the love of the Black people. And I've experienced that in my own life. It had nothing to do with me being ginger. You know, it just had a lot to do with just where I was in life and what was going on in my life. And it was, you know, the Black churches that rallied around my mother when I was a child and just embraced her and helped her keep her sanity through her mess that she was going through. Yeah. You know, so there's lots of love there, and we were very accepted, but that had nothing to do with me being a ginger. So I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, I guess, do you on some level identify with this whole idea of redheaded people? I mean, this is almost like it's a weird conversation to even be having. I will just want to acknowledge that from the foundation. It's a weird conversation to be like, what these people are essentially saying is that white people are the Black people of white people. Because as I said, there's no real genetic basis for calling, you know, redheaded people Black. And the original person who made this video was really referencing some Haitian god that redheads supposedly gingers supposedly descended from. There really is no foundation for this. This is really more of a vibes conversation. It's a spiritual conversation, really. But do you understand, CE? I guess as someone who's, you know, in that group, do you understand why that comparison would be made?
I guess we need to find some gingers that have really been through hell, for being a ginger to see if they can relate to the connection. I don't see that. I don't feel that.
You don't feel that redheads are the black people of white people. You don't identify with that whole
No, I really
idea.
don't. I don't. And I'm not saying that somebody who feels that way is wrong. I'm not making that connection. I'm not feeling that at all. You know,
Yeah.
I just think that, somebody was feeling however they were feeling, and this came along, and that's how it struck me. It was like, okay, this is funny. This is, this is kind of cool. This will go away in a minute.
Yeah.
But no, I don't get that. I haven't had that experience.
Yeah. And Purpleina is here saying that she's a ginger and that she has seen a bunch of those videos. Okay, so I didn't know if this was like some sort, like, I just tend to believe the best in people. I tend to believe that people are sincere. I didn't know if these videos of redheads coming through my screen and crying, like this could all be manufactured. I am here to acknowledge, as someone who does content for social media, I know that there are people who are constantly in, my inbox or reaching out saying, can you make this content, make that content? I'm just always, on the lookout for like paid content, because more of it's out there than what you might think.
Right.
So apparently Purpleina is saying she has seen these videos. I've seen a couple of black folks just commenting on it, like black gingers, black folks with red hair that have been kind of commenting, just like, oh my God, this is crazy. This is even happening. And a couple of clapback videos that I have seen, Purpleina is saying that she was mercilessly teased. And I don't know that other word, sexualized. Oh my goodness. It's horrible. Dolly. Is Dolly available to come on live? This is my sister. And if I could add her as a guest, I would. I don't know if she's available to actually come on. This is CE's wife, who is my sister. Yeah, there are a bunch of black gingers. Cloud is saying that she wants to see the black gingers. Yeah, if my sister's available, I'll have her come on too, and say, well, she's always got opinions about things, as sisters tend to.
Yeah, she does.
But one of the things one of the pushbacks that I heard from a couple of creators, one of them wasn't even black, one of them was, I think, Asian. She was like, well, when Halle Bailey did Little Mermaid, all that dust up that happened with them, doing the cross-racial whatever casting for Little Mermaid, and the crazy dust up. Okay, Dolly's on. This is my sister, Dolly, you guys. Hi, Dolly.
Hey, I'm not sure why it's not letting me show video, but I'm here.
Well, rest assured, she's black. She's my sister. Full blood. So this is CE's wife. This is my sister, who is 10 and a half months older than me, Dolly. So whatever contributions you have, Dolly, just jump right in there. But I was making the comment about Halle Bailey getting so much flack for being the new Little Mermaid. And a creator jumped on and said, you know what, I'm really not really even appreciating a lot of this kind of silly hee stuff around gingers being the new black people, because they really went after her. There were a lot of videos that were made by redheaded people being like, well, where's our representation? How dare you put a black person in there as the Little Mermaid? And if you look at Hollywood, they do this stuff all the time to redheaded characters. When they decide to make a character black, often they will use a redheaded character. It's a whole thing. It's a very common thing for redheads to be replaced with black people. So
I've seen just a few redheads just kind of saying, I didn't ask to be included in this. Just that kind of, but not a lot. I haven't seen a whole lot of. So I think if redheads are feeling that way, then they're quiet.
Hey, Diamond, that's my other sister.
They don't want that.
Yeah. I mean, we saw another creator who was like, hey, if you if you don't want to be a part of it, be quiet. If a black creator says, you're not invited to the cookout, I'm not participating in this, I'm not acknowledging this trend, you're not supposed to be in there arguing with black folks about, yes, we are the new Negroes and all of this stuff. Like, there's an etiquette to participating in the you know, and if I think if people leave it in the lighthearted space, then
Yes.
it can we can avoid getting weird about it. Um, yeah, what do you think? Like I said, CE, how do you take this? Does it feel like a lighthearted thing, or does it feel? I guess you were saying it feels more like a danger. You immediately see the danger, the potential danger of like somebody's going to take this too far.
And they have
Yeah.
and will continue with,
Thank you,
but
Hannah.
initially I just thought it was a joke. I thought it was, a lighthearted thing. And in that vein, I didn't have a problem with it necessarily. But then when I started seeing ginger people making videos talking about, racial stereotypes of black people, I'm going to do whatever, and they would say whatever, or I'm not going to do this, and it just made me kind of sick to my stomach. I was like, that's not okay, and
Yeah.
I don't like that part of it. But if we can stay lighthearted, like I believe it was intended, I don't know if that lady was serious or not. And if, she's not basing on anything actual or factual, then she probably was meaning it lighthearted. But
The original lady,
yeah,
no, like I said, she's like a root worker or something, and she was saying that gingers are descended from a Haitian god or something. It's like she's coming from this other place. There was really
yeah.
no genetic basis to what she was saying at all.
Hmm.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know in her mind, but it did not have a real basis in science, in other words.
Yeah. So, like I said, if it stays lighthearted, great. If it starts becoming a thing where we're being insensitive and racial and racist, and then no, I don't want to be a part of that.
How do you feel about this whole, I guess, you're invited to the cookout, you're not invited to the cookout, this trend? I mean, how does that sit with you? I guess if someone CE, and y'all don't know this, but CE can throw down when we have cookouts. CE is the one behind the grill, or at least he was for many years. He was behind the grill at the cookout. That's how deep in the trenches that he's been with our family for what 30 years or something. CE. So
Yeah.
this whole idea of like, we're inviting you to the cookout because now you have these credentials. I mean, I guess how does that strike you when you hear statements like that being made?
Well, when people say it to me, like, man, you're invited to the cookout. I love that. I love that I'm invited to the cookout. But even if just because you're invited to the cookout, you got to know how to act when you go over somebody's house. You don't just go over there. I'm here because I was invited. I'm going to act crazy and say awful stuff. And, so you got to act like you got some home training when you go over somebody's house. So when people say you're invited to the cookout, I take that as, oh, thank you. I'm glad I can be comfortable with you and you're comfortable with me. And I have a pastor friend of mine who sometime back, he patted me on the arm. We were having a conversation around race and stuff. And he pats me on the arm and he goes, I don't see color, brother. And I said to him, that's not the flex that you think it is.
Right.
That's not saying what you think it's saying. You should see color. God created color, sir. And he made it, but we're supposed to walk in love with all the colors and celebrate the differences and acknowledge and not, tear people down because they're different, but it's not, so it just, I tried to help him understand, what he was saying, but I think it's,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think it's a positive thing when someone says to you, you're invited to what we're doing and they're comfortable with you. Don't take that for granted. Don't just take that as I'm in and I can do whatever I want to. I'm just,
I mean, stuff like this, I feel like it just brings out people's character. Like if you have a problem, if you are a little bit racist underneath, then a conversation like this is going to reveal that, as it did with that, at least the one creator that I saw who was just immediately jumped on the bandwagon and started making racist jokes. And sometimes there's like a fine line. Like I have a mutual whose name is Pearl Mania. He's a redheaded guy. You've probably seen him. Really kind of, shaggy red hair, and he just yells at the camera. He's really brilliant, smart guy. But then he got on and did a joke, which I felt like was right kind of at the line. And he was like, I don't know if you've seen this video. He said, why? He said, I don't know what's going on. All of a sudden, he said, I'm paying my bills on time, but my credit score just dropped. And then the smoke alarm beeps in the background. It's just like, it was this layered joke of like, Black folks with the smoke alarm in the background and, having your credit assailed for no good reason. But I think, you really have to be kind of plugged in culturally, and you have to have a certain amount of sensitivity that's already there if you want to jump on the joke bandwagon. Like if you are somebody who is ham-fisted and you got some issues going on underneath and you try to get in there making jokes, then you are going to be wildly inappropriate. You can't help but be inappropriate,
right,
with your humor. Right. So what I want to know from you, and I guess I'll ask Dolly as well. This is for those of you who maybe are just joining. This is my brother-in-law, CE, who's a real live ginger, live and in person. We have one. We caught one. And he's been with my sister. They have been married for 28 years. My sister, Dolly, is the other person who is on this live. Purpleina, thank you. But yeah, they've been married for almost 30 years. And we've seen a lot. He's seen a lot. He's been deep in the weeds with it all. If I could tell you it all, I would, but I won't attempt to do that. But we're talking about this whole, trend about gingers being the new Black people, or and how this kind of fits with him. So I guess, Dolly, from your perspective, what is it? Because I know you and CE have your conversations around this stuff. What do white people, where do they go wrong, I guess, when it comes to this whole idea of being invited to the cookout, being invited in to Black spaces, and, even having that desire, or when that invitation is extended? Why is it that we immediately tense up? Why is it that Black folks immediately are just like, oh, I don't know if you want to be extending that invitation? Dolly, can you kind of speak to that if you're hearing me? Dolly. Okay, CE.
I think it's because, well, I know how I feel because I've been in many family functions. Since I've been in the family for, officially 28 years, longer than that around the family. But anytime someone gets invited to the actual, the family reunion or the cookout, and they're coming in, you just don't know what they're going to do. You just don't know what's going to come out of their mouth. Great example. We were having a gathering last year on the 4th of July at the church. We were having an outreach, and this lady, who, not a ginger, but she's a white lady, she was standing around with me and Dolly's children and our son. We have 5 sons, and they were standing around talking, and they were calling each other in their conversation the N-word, and so they were going back and forth. Well,
wait,
this lady, your sons
who are biracial.
Yes, make that very clear. Me and Dolly's 5 sons, who were standing there talking to each other and using that word back and forth. Well, this white lady was standing there, and I was within earshot, but I was out of the room. I was around the corner when one of my sons said that to his brother, and was just talking about whatever they were talking about. I heard skin hit skin, and I turned around, and this lady was hitting my son, yelling at him, "You don't say," and she was saying the word with the hard R.
A white woman is correcting your biracial son and saying, you don't use the N-word.
You don't use the N-word, but she wasn't saying the N-word. She was saying the word with the hard R and hitting him all the time. She was saying that. You don't say hard R. You don't say that hard. And so I walked in and said, "Did you hit my son? You hit my son?" Well, he don't. So it took a lot for me not to, lay her out. But anyway, it was very, very much, I wish she hadn't been at the cookout. She just didn't know, because you don't know what they're going to do. You don't know what they're going to come in and be insensitive about, or be just awful to you about. So that, for me, when I see people coming in that don't understand they don't read the room. They don't understand the sensitivity. They don't understand it. Can you just be here in this space and enjoy what's going on without trying to change it and make yourself more comfortable in this environment that you've come into someone else's turf, and learn to be comfortable with them rather than trying to make them comfortable with you. It's just, I may have said that backwards, but just trying to, just come in and relax, sit down, read the room, and join in when you can and have a good time. Don't make this weird. Don't make this awkward, and don't try to fit in by becoming a stereotypical racist in the moment, because sometimes we say stuff and we think one thing, you ever said something like that sounded way better in my head, than when it comes out your mouth. And I think that, I just think that's part of why there's apprehension there, because you just don't know what people are going to do or what's going to come out of their mouth.
Yeah, we got somebody in the comments, Mr. Home Advocate says white people don't read rooms because they must control. Don't read rooms because they must control. Dolly, I'm echoing back. Dolly, I'm echoing back.
I'm sorry.
You need to turn your phone down.
Sorry. Give me just a second. I was unmuting so I could say this, that I think that it needs to be clarified that when white people are invited to the cookout, they're invited to bring the ice and plates. It's not.
You can go pick up some sodas.
It needs to be clarified that that's what it is, that we are not inviting you to be a part of the culture. We're inviting you to observe, like you're invited to be there to spectate. You're allowed to be there because you have earned a place to be able to, to be in, to spectate, because we have been so protective of our culture, even for spectator, because of how it's handled. And people think that them being able to be a part of that gives them permission to belong, and that's not it. That's not what it's.
Yeah.
That's a different level.
So around this issue of belonging, I think Dolly might be one of CNCE's grandbabies. I think I hear in the background. So with this issue of belonging, CE, and I know you can speak to this. What does it mean? I guess I need you to speak for all of the whites. I need you to be the white person whisperer today. No, speak for the gingers right now. What does it mean to you guys? Why are we seeing tears? Why are we seeing those tears? What does it mean to belong? What does it mean for a Black person to say you're invited to the cookout? When you, as a white person, hear that, particularly as a redheaded white person, what does that mean to you? I mean, I don't want to say what does it mean, what are they saying, but what is the significance of that for you?
Well, I think it has to do with acceptance. I have trouble connecting the acceptance to the cookout with my red hair. I remember getting made fun of, but it wasn't traumatic. I was bullied more for my weight growing up than I was for my red hair, because I've always been a big person. So, I had traumatic bullying over my weight. So I get that. But as far as being a redheaded, I don't make a strong connection with being seen as a redhead, because I've always been a redhead. So it's who I am. But for someone to accept you, to be seen, to be invited into their culture or into their environment, I don't take that lightly in any setting. When someone reaches out to you and says, "Hey, I want to invite you in to come over, or to come sit with us, or to come and be a part of this conversation, or a part of this day or this activity or whatever," I don't take that lightly, because they don't have to invite you to anything. But obviously there are people that have been traumatized because they are gingers, and for them this is just what they needed. And I can't speak for all of them, because my experience has been different, I guess.
Yeah. We have several comments that I've wanted to highlight. Sherry is saying, "I wish I belonged somewhere." It is that feeling of belonging. I'm sorry when I hear someone say something like that, because I think all of us, to a degree, probably know that feeling of like not really ever feeling like we have a tribe, a group of
Mhm.
people that we truly belong to, other than, I guess in your case, you get married and you have children, you create your own tribe, you know.
Yeah.
But just like a tribe out in the world, I don't know that I've ever felt like I truly like, oh, these are my people. This is where I belong. I don't think I've ever felt that. Cloud is saying, do they hear it as you are a good white person? Is that how you interpret it, CE?
You're
You're invited to the
maybe.
cookout. You're a good white person. You're one of the good ones, as they tell us.
Yeah, I can see that. I want it for myself. I would, if it's got to be labeled as something, I'd want it to be you're a safe, you're safe.
Mm.
You're a safe person to be around, and
Wow,
you can come in and we
that's a
don't have to
really
work.
interesting point. Yeah.
Because I, Dolly and I've been like married a long time. We have 7 children, and we've got tons of nieces and nephews that have come through our house, and we've pastored churches, and we've had church members that come through our house of all national races and ethnicities. And I want anybody that comes into 5912, that's our house address. I want anybody that comes in those doors to feel safe, regardless of what they look like, where they come from, what they've experienced, what they're currently experiencing. I want them to feel safe. I don't want to come there acting crazy, but I want them to feel safe, that I'm not their enemy. I was walking through a courthouse one time, and I turned the corner, and on this bench were 5 or 6 young black men just sitting there. I don't know why they were there, but they were just sitting there, and they looked at me, and I looked at them, and I smiled at them and said, "Hey, how y'all doing?" And immediately their demeanor changed, and "Oh, we're good, sir. How are you?" And I thought about that. They were looking at me. They didn't know what was going to come out of my mouth. Was I going to be the next viral video, the next racist encounter that they had? And I didn't know what they were thinking about me. And what I was thinking was, I hope they don't feel threatened by me, because at that time when this went down, there was a lot of, just starting to come out with these people are starting to video stuff. And because this has been a few years ago. And so I noticed that when I changed how my face looked, they changed how their face looked. They didn't know what I was, so I want to be viewed as a safe. He's safe to have him around. It's safe to have him in the room. It's safe to have him at the cookout. We don't have to stay on our guard with him. And that's what I want, whether it be, I'm a good one, whatever. I just want to be a safe one.
Mm.
And that's
That's a really important tweak. I really appreciate that. Just that little tweak, versus being one of the good ones, which can be performative, which can be like, or one of the cool ones, I can dance, I can cook, or I can sing like black people, I can do this, I can do that. That little mind shift, that tweak that says, I want to be a safe place for black folks. I don't want them to have to constantly be on their guard around me. I mean, that's so important. Miss Shea is saying I was the only ginger out of 6 kids, and I've been a misfit my whole life. Oh my God, I can't even imagine. Even small differences like that, and the parents can set the tone for that stuff. In black families, a lot of times it's like light skin versus dark skin, or who's got what grade of hair or whatever. Anything that distinguishes you, it has the potential to make you, feel like you're just out there, on an island by yourself. I'm sorry that was your experience. Purpleina, who said that they are a ginger who has been bullied their whole life, it said, when people say you're invited to the cookout, they're saying it means that I'm accepted by someone, anyone. I was even bullied by my parents. Ugh. Those experiences, like a lot of black folks are saying, like we're just kind of shocked to hear that it has been as difficult as it has been for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Why do you feel like it was a little bit different for you, CE? Because you're saying you didn't experience it like that.
Yeah, like I said, I got bullied more. I did get called like I said, carrot top, mild stuff like that. But I was never hit or beat up or talked about horribly about that. I don't know. I was bullied more for being a chubby kid. I was talked about horribly that way. That if I have trauma around bullying, it's behind that. But my sister, who's 10 years older than me, she has a different story. She had a different experience. She was bullied. She did get rocks thrown at her. She came home crying because kids would make fun of her red hair. And so she has a different experience. And I mentioned, like I said, she's 10 years older than me. So she was growing up in the 60s. I grew up in the 70s. I don't know if that made a difference or if it was just that by the time I got up to where I was, mom had me on lockdown. I was at school and church and home. That was it. We didn't go anywhere. And all my bullying happened for different reasons. So I don't know. I can't really say why it was different.
Maybe, I don't know, because a couple of the people that I saw crying were men. I was going to say maybe it's a male versus female issue, but like there were guys, very much in my feed who were saying, it's been really, really hard. Mr. Home Advocate, growing up around white folks, I learned that they divide by hair color. Blonde is seen as the elite, and that's absolutely true. I remember Chris Rock being on Oprah when his movie Good Hair came out way back in I think it was like 2011 or maybe 2009 or something. And he was talking about all of these divisions that exist with Black people with hair. It's such a big thing. Like I said, even in families, if you have a different grade of hair, sometimes, those hierarchies are being created. Skin color, big in the Black community, but with white folks, a lot of that hierarchy can exist around hair. And Chris Rock pointed that out, whereas all these white people were sitting and listening to this conversation about Black people and hair. And they were like, well, we just don't understand what the big deal is. And then he said, look at all these women on this front row. He said, every single one of you have the same shade of hair. And I guarantee you that none of you were born. Hello, Delano, that's my other brother. I'm just doing extra in the most. But yeah, he's like, white people have the same thing with hair. He's like, this is a really big hang up with you guys, hair color. It becomes a way to, separate people into groups. And we just can't.
While you were talking just now, I had a memory of, there were some other gingers in my family on my mother's side. And they're older than me, but their hair was more of an orange red. And so there was this feeling, and I remember as a child hearing my mother talk about how our red hair was better because it was more auburn than my cousin's hair, who was orange. And she was so glad that her children didn't come out with that orange hair. And I remember feeling just, as a kid, feeling like, oh, good, I got the better red hair. I got the right kind of red hair. I remember feeling that way, but it wasn't anything that made me treat my cousin bad. She was old enough to be my mother, but it was still, I felt that little sense of superiority because my hair was auburn and hers was orange. Thank God I'm not like her. It was just, because I heard, it was just, I just had that memory while you were talking about that. But there was quite a few of the orange gingers on my mother's side. And I don't know how we came out with the darker red hair, but anyway. Yeah. Oh, Kitty Sparrows. Oh my gosh.
What are you saying,
That's terrible. Kitty? Her comment, she was asked a very inappropriate question at the age of 8 years old. That's not okay.
Oh, something about the carpet and the drapes, I'm imagining.
Yeah.
And how are people so inappropriate with children? Yeah, I've blocked this little things matter most person. Just seems like they're here to argue. So I'm blocked. Someone is saying that redheads sometimes require more anesthesia. Have you heard that, CE?
I don't know that I have.
Because being redhead that's an actual recessive gene that has to come from both sides of your family.
Yeah. And it did on us. But I don't know that when I've had surgeries and different things, they haven't brought that up, that you're going to need more anesthesia. But
yeah,
if they, they may have. But I think I've heard that they do. Someone made a comment about redheads, making a division amongst ourselves. And it's a real thing because like I said, I remember that while you were talking.
Hello, Heather Ray. Yes, Mishi, I hope I'm saying that right, Mishi or Miche says, I've been bragging to people. Obviously, Miche is a ginger themselves. I've been bragging to people and feeling on top of the world all week. is that silly. How do you I don't know how you respond to that, see?
No, I mean, if somebody said something and it's making you feel good and you can feel good about that and it's healing something inside you, embrace it.
Yeah.
Embrace it. It doesn't have to be that you make that everybody's experience, but embrace it. If it's something that's healing you and it's good for you, I have no condemnation for that. And I have nothing to say about that. Good for you. Embrace that and enjoy it and just keep it appropriate and lighthearted and don't be racist.
Yeah. Someone named Juan. I mean, I have a response to Juan who's saying, I felt like the tweak that you provided to say that you want Black folks to feel safe around you. But I guess this is maybe hitting him a little funny, saying elaborate, because the way I hear it is that he's saying that it's that saviorism, white saviorism. How do you distinguish the safe between being a safe place for Black people and being a savior to Black people?
I'm not trying to save Black people, but I want them to be comfortable around me and not feel like they're unsafe around me. I don't know how else to say that. I'm not trying to save them from anything. I love to be in the room when they're gathered and having the cookout, that people want to be invited to. And when I come into the room, I don't want everybody to be like, there he is. What's he going to say? What's he going to do? What's going to come out of his mouth this time? I don't want that. I don't want them to feel like somebody made a comment about not having to worry about code switching. I don't want people to feel like they have to code switch just because I walked in a room. And they can just continue being themselves. That's what I mean by that.
Yeah. So what do white people, from your perspective, what do white people get wrong when these conversations are happening? What makes you cringe? What makes you go, oh God, this is what we do,
It doesn't usually take very long to cringe in those settings, because most of the time when I'm around a group of white people that are uncomfortable with their environment, or they're just coming around, or they don't understand certain things, they'll start asking awkward questions, or they'll start, saying things that they don't even realize are microaggressions, or and they start saying things. You just don't know what's going to fall out of their mouth, and then they start, trying to, get in with the group that they're with and saying stuff, and they think it's funny, and it's not funny. And if people are gracious, they won't say much, but you get the right person, you're going to get your feelings hurt. And so that starts, bothering me. My mother, rest her soul, she's in heaven. But there was a few years ago when somebody that we both knew was on Facebook, and they were making posts about racial injustice, and they were making posts about, racism and inequalities. And, it was a lot of posts. All their posts were talking about that. And my mother said to me,
this is a Black person you're speaking of.
Yeah, the Black person. Yes. Talking about that. And so my mother said to me, did you see this person's posts? And I said, yeah, I did. And she says, I don't really believe that they've experienced all of that kind of racism. I mean, I've been around the same church for 35 years, and I've never seen, and I was like, well, Mom, you know them in church. That's your context for this person. You don't know them outside of church, because the only time you see this person is at church. You don't know their journey. They live 6 other days when they're not shouting and jumping and running the aisles. There's 6 other days for them to experience all this, and you don't know their life's journey. And she was having a hard time. I said, she's living as a Black person, a Black woman. She's an entrepreneur. She's got all these things going on that she's fighting racial systemic things to overcome. And she's talking about her experience. So you can't say that you didn't have that experience. I had a lady today. It's like, I just didn't think racism was a thing. I mean, I didn't grow up around it. And I was like, wow. And I took her, I said, well, that's part of what they refer to as white privilege. You didn't have to experience anything. You've just grown up in a bubble. And, so that when the privilege starts showing, the ignorance starts showing, and there's no guard on their mouth, and you can't kick them under the table, and you kick them under the table, and instead of them getting quiet, they go, "Ow, why did you kick me?" And it just makes it more awkward. That's where it goes wrong. You start making inappropriate comments, you get uncomfortable, so you start talking, and you don't like the silence. You got to fill it up because everyone has just kind of clammed up because you're not reading the room well.
Yeah.
That's
Cloud is saying, try not to block anybody accidentally. Are the redheads excited to be accepted by Black people talking to their moms like CE talked to his? So this person is saying, you all are coming out and saying, oh, how great that you all are accepting us, and we feel warm and welcome and all fuzzy and wuzzy. But are you turning around and having these important and difficult conversations with your family members who may be problematic in their own ways? Are you turning around and addressing these realities within your own communities and helping them to, understand why these tensions still exist? I mean, what is your impression of that, CE? Are white folks having conversations with white folks about this stuff?
I am sure that there are these kinds of conversations going on, but I am 100% confident that there's not enough of that going on, because Dolly made a statement one time during Trump's first administration. She made a statement, and and I don't know if she was quoting someone or if it was just something that she said, but she said, until white people start having the difficult conversations with white people and holding white people accountable for their bad behavior, things aren't going to change quickly.
Yeah.
And I heard her when she said that, and it just made so much sense to me. And so while I had been willing to have difficult conversations with my own family, with my own friend groups or whatever, I started being more aggressive with that. I can't tell you how many shares I'm like, here's some, hey, have you ever heard of Dara Starr Tucker? This is my sister. Here, you need to listen to this, and send them a link to something, because you've explained something so beautifully in one of your breakdowns. And I'm like, here, you need to hear this. I don't always tell them you're my sister, because I don't want them to think I'm just sending them something sometimes, but I'm like, here, listen to this. And I've had some of them come back to me and say, that was really good. I didn't know that. But we've got to start having more conversations. I was talking to a lady earlier today who asked me about people, how they reacted to my children. My children, me and Dolly's children, don't make sense to people when Dolly's not with me, because they're darker than I am. So they've asked me questions like, are you with a daycare center? Are you with an agency? What kind of ministry is this? They paid for our food in a restaurant because they thought I was a foster father. And
Wow.
those kind of things happen. And I've had people walking to me, oh, are they adopted? And I've looked at them and like, I'm sorry, what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
And I just make them explain the question that they're asking, because they're asking something, one, it's none of their business.
Yeah.
And secondly, they're trying to make sense of the little dark children with the white guy. And it's just, so I've had people, well, like you said, the quiet part out loud, it really didn't matter why these are my children. If I had adopted all 7 of them, they're my children. We don't have to keep calling, these are my adopted children. Quit drawing lines in the sand about that kind of stuff. They're either your children or they're not. They're my babies. No, I didn't adopt any of them. If you stand them all out with their dark hair in the sunlight, direct sunlight, you can see flecks of red all through their hair. But you got to be in direct sunlight. But they're mine, But I think that the conversations are happening. I'm sure there's not enough of them, and they need to be on more. There need to be bigger conversations and bigger moments where people can say, hey, we need to do better. We're the problem. We've caused the problem. We've tolerated the problem. We've exacerbated the problem. We've been silent about the problem, and let's deal with it.
Yeah.
And let's have that conversation, and cry if you need to, scream if you need to, but learn, and get to know what's going on around you. That's so important.
Yeah. I think for some reason, I don't know. It's an odd thing to me, and I've observed it all my life. because we've been in a whole lot of white environments our entire life. Probably more white environments than you've been in, or at least as many white environments as you've been in. We were raised in, and there's just something about white folks that I feel like they just feel like they need to be in charge. It's this weird thing where they just are uncomfortable being led by us. They're uncomfortable with conversations being led by us. And I don't know how many, especially white men I've had in my comment section trying to straighten me out on what racism is and is not. I've blocked a couple of people in this conversation today in the comments, blocked a couple of white dudes, I'm sure, who want to tell you how you should feel about race and racism. Oh, well, let me straighten you out. Let me let you know, it's not that big a deal. Why are you making such a big deal over jokes and all of this kind of stuff? It's just this need to be in charge. Like, what is that?
Yeah.
No, I need to know. That is not a rhetorical question.
No, but I mean,
for the whites.
No, it's with these conversations for white people especially comes this level of accountability that nobody wants to deal with. And when you can't tolerate accountability, everything, and I've heard this said, everything feels like an attack. You're making me feel bad because I'm this. Well, okay, you may not have owned a slave. You may not have been physically the one who did the thing, but we still have to acknowledge that it happened, that it was our ancestors who did this to those ancestors. But this stuff, the residue of all of this is still very real and very alive today. And it's got to stop. It's got to stop. And we've got to cry aloud. But the scripture in the Bible says, cry aloud and spare not. We've got to cry aloud and say, this is a problem. This is the issue here. And I'm sorry that it's making you feel bad and you don't want to critically think about this.
Right.
That's why we're making laws about critical race theory. I'm like, are you serious? It's because they don't want to. I don't want to feel bad. I don't want you to make me feel bad. No, abusers never want to feel bad, and they want the ones that they abused to be quiet. And when I'm talking in generalities here, but when you've abused somebody, you don't want them to tell their real story. You don't want that because it makes you look less than what you feel like you are. Yeah. And it makes others look down on you.
Yeah, it's interesting to have this conversation from the perspective of abuser to abused. Because some of you may know, I do a radio show here in Los Angeles, a daily radio show on KGLH, which is 102.3 here in LA. And we had a show on Tuesday, I think. It's a morning show. We had an episode on abuse, on victims of domestic violence and abuse. And I was talking about women and, this kind of being primarily a women's issue and was coming from that perspective. And, immediately I started getting calls on, well, what about men? And what about men? And what about men? And I had to tell the two guests that were there, I had to take a break because I'm like, I do not want to rant on air. I don't want this to just become a thing where I kind of blow up, because this has become an area of real sensitivity to me with the kind of work that I do online around race. And I noticed this when conversations around race happen, it's very easy for certain people, somebody needs to mute or turn their phone down or something because I'm hearing my voice echoing back to me. But when I hear these conversations around race and, we were talking about abuse, like I said, on the show on Tuesday, it's like immediately they want to divert the conversation. They want to divert it away from what is being talked about, as you said, because they feel like the spotlight is being shown on them. It's like, okay, now all of a sudden, everyone's hyper aware of me as a man. These were men that were calling and saying, what about men? How come you don't talk about what men are going through? It's like, you know what? We had a conversation about leadership the next day with women in leadership. Not one call did I get with some man going, why don't you talk about men in leadership? They only wanted to divert the conversation to men dealing with abuse because they felt culpable. They felt guilty. They felt immediate discomfort with the idea that we're having a conversation about abuse or violence that is enacted against women, this anti-woman, misogynistic violence. They just weren't comfortable with the conversation. I don't know if it's because of a guilty conscience. I don't want to assume, because maybe you done some stuff in your past that you're not willing to grapple with or whatever. But it always sets my antennas, on high alert when I feel like people
Mhm.
cannot just settle into that discomfort for a little while
Mhm.
and, start throwing out comments like, the Irish were slaves too, or, all lives matter, or whatever it
Yeah.
is, just to deflect from the conversation that's being had.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The deflection is a defense mechanism, and if it's kind of like when I was a child, my mother would bring up something that I did not want her to know the truth. I was going to be in trouble. I would start changing the subject, trying to
Right.
divert, what she's talking about, or divert her attention over here so she wouldn't know that I broke the vase that she told me not to play with. But so, oh, look at this and this, and it's a defense mechanism.
Yeah, I appreciate what Cloud is saying. It's hard to put it into words because you don't want to sound insensitive. I don't want to sound insensitive to the fact that, yes, men do deal with abuse. Yes, redheads have suffered, as being kind of this, as they say, the redheaded stepchild, those kinds of terms. That's meaningful. We would never want to take away from the true hurt
Right.
or abuse or suffering that anyone has dealt with. But then when people feel the need to make themselves, the main character, the star of the show, Cloud is saying problematic men only care about male victims of abuse when it helps them to speak over women who are victims of abuse. And so I think that's probably a lot of the stiffening up that has happened around this conversation about gingers being the new black people, or gingers also being black people, is that, now this creates a scenario where there's a certain group of white people that now get to claim equal marginalization with black people. Oh, well, this is us too. It's the Irish were slaves too conversation. It's the all lives matter conversation. It's that thing that, continually comes up when people either grow weary about conversations around marginalization, or they are just uncomfortable. They're just not willing to sit with the discomfort. And now we've got to get this group of white people out here that are the representatives of, well, we're pretty much black people. It's us. We're that, that need to, center whiteness, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, you're redheaded, but you're still white. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And the whole idea that redheaded people are black, I think, is, can just be deeply offensive to some people. But if the original creator had taken a little more time to create a more nuanced conversation, it wouldn't have taken off the way it has. That video has 60 million views, by the way.
Wow.
Conversation wouldn't have taken off the way that it has, but I think it would have been better to begin a more nuanced conversation around, the strata or the hierarchy of marginalization within racial groups.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I'm going to read a couple of comments. I will say it's hilarious seeing other white people freaking out about it. I've seen a lot of really good comments come through, and I apologize I haven't been able to stop and kind of acknowledge. But I really appreciate you taking time to talk this through with me, CE.
Yeah.
More about the punishment than the lesson. Yeah, the red, I think this says red hood. The thing about the Irish is overplayed and exaggerated. As an Irish person, I will say that. I'm like, yeah, how does that, when people start bringing up, the Irish being slaves and all of this stuff, it's like, okay, well, how, you weren't having a conversation about that until somebody started talking about chattel slavery. This did not affect your life. How does this affect the generations going forward? What are the systemic ways in which this has impacted your life versus you just throwing that out there, this deflection thing.
Mm-hmm.
Someone says, my young son is a ginger and he was so excited he went to school and told his best, I'm assuming his best friends. That's really sweet. But a child would be excited about that.
Absolutely.
But CE, you've got a slightly redheaded grandchild, don't you?
No, he's redheaded. He is definitely redheaded. Yeah. When you see him in person, when you come home next, you'll see like his hair is he's
It's turning red.
yeah, he's a ginger. So,
Wow.
so yeah, and he looks like me. His daddy is the son that looks the most like me, and then he looks like me, and so it's like copy and paste, copy and paste. Yeah,
Copy of a copy of a copy.
yeah, yeah. It's
Well,
it's
that's pretty cool to see. Actually, you're back. You're back. You thought it was all lost with the generation after you, but y'all made a comeback.
made a comeback. Yes, absolutely.
I really appreciate you sitting down and talking to me about this, CE, from your unique perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, and it's a conversation that I'm interested to see. If it lands someplace that's even halfway positive. It doesn't seem to be the pattern on social media. Everything sort of
Right.
has to devolve into just a hellscape, and then we know that the trend's over because everything just got super racist and ugly. So
I will say I saw a video of a lady responding to this trend, and it caused her to have a memory of her best friend as when they were like in second grade, and he was a ginger and she was a black lady, and he died. He just died over the summer after second grade and drowned. She said it was a drowning accident, but she was talking about how he was her bestie and how she felt through all of that. Through it caused this trend of the red gingers being black people started her to thinking about him. She has reconnected with his mother all these years later and has had a conversation. I thought that was a positive thing that came out of this trend for sure, is that she got her to talking about it, and TikTok helped her find his mother, because she's like, I don't know where she is. I don't know. She remembered having a brief conversation with the mom right after he died, and how his mom just let her talk and say her 8-year-old things, and whatever. And she said, I'd love to reconnect with his mom. I think his name was Blake. And the next update I saw a couple days later, I've been on the phone with Blake's mom. And so there was a very emotional reunion. And so that's something positive that came out of it for sure.
yeah, that's really cool. I mean, even that, I think with these online trends, we have to make of them what we will, because that it's going to evolve. That it's not going to stay positive. That there's just the ugliness is going to seep in, but kind of paying attention to the sincerity that did come out of it, I think is the interesting thing. And even having conversations like this, because I think, that's another way that we can sort of just create a healing moment and a learning moment, a teachable moment, as Barack Obama would say. So, yeah, thank you, Cloud. I appreciate you being a part of the conversation, and Red Hood and a lot of others who are jumping in and participating in the comments. I have been paying attention, even if I haven't been responding to them all. So I appreciate all of you being here with me, and thank you, CE, for being here with me as well. Someone says Cherry says Facebook allowed us to reunite with my mom's friends. She had been in junior high and lost contact for 30 years. Yeah, social media, there's really no excuse not to be able to find people. And it's crazy how quick they can find folks when they want to. Really, really crazy.
Yeah. They can find you to reunite you and find you to cancel you. You just, whatever you need done. Whatever you need done. But yeah, no, this has been great. I appreciate the invitation, the conversation that you and I were having this morning. Pastor CE is 100% black. I don't know who that is, but that's funny. But somebody that knows me. But we're having a conversation this morning, and I was enjoying it. So the invitation to do this was great. It was great.
Yeah.
Oh, that's Chantel. Hi, Chantel. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you had time. Glad we both had time, and I'll probably put this up on my podcast as a podcast on YouTube. The podcast is called All Over the Place. If you all are not seeing me in your feed, it's because TikTok has been throttling my views probably for a year and a half. It's not that I haven't been putting out content. I haven't been putting out as much content, but I am starting to put out, Steve Junior. I'm going to be doing several shows coming up. I have an album coming out this year. There's a lot going on. So you should be following me on Instagram Follow me on Facebook, whatever platform. Threads, I'm not on Twitter. Instagram is Dara Tucker B. Threads is Dara Tucker B. Facebook is Dara Starr Tucker. YouTube is Dara Starr Tucker. I am out there, and I'm starting to put out more breakdowns, which is my kind of flagship content, which I love to do. But I'm noticing TikTok just is not showing them to a lot of people, and I'm noticing they're doing the same thing with a lot of creators who kind of blew up, years ago. They're just, they are not showing our stuff to people. I'm not too bent out of shape about it, but follow me on other platforms if you want to see what I'm up to. Because thank you. Hi, Mark Kibble. We are wrapping up. Hey, Mark. We've been talking about gingers, redheads, and white people doing stuff they shouldn't do, but Cindy's been helping us out, so I appreciate it. This is my brother-in-law, you guys, and my sister Dolly is the other person. Thank you, Dolly, for participating. If you can still hear us, Dolly does like 15 things at one time regularly. Thank you, Cloud, for following the Instagram. Yeah, we're wrapping it up, Mark. Perhaps you and I can do a live at some point. I told your wife Liz about an idea for not really a game show, but like an activity show that I want us to do. So next time you guys come through LA, I'm going to kidnap you and force you to participate in activities, kind activities, fun activities. I'm sorry, that sounded really like potentially menacing. So. Well, thank you, CE, for being here. Thank you to everyone for being here. She said, oh, Mark, Liz told him about the idea. Wonderful. It's a date. We'll do it.
Nice. Dara, as always, it
was my idea. It wasn't. Yeah, Liz's.
As always, it's great to have conversation with you and to be part of what you're doing. As the family, we're so proud of you. We're so proud of you.
Oh, sinners. Yeah, Mark, we should do a live. We absolutely should. I don't think you do lives at all, really. I never think you do them. And I reached out to CE. I was like, man, let's just go live. Let's just talk it out. Yeah. So yeah, Mark, let's do a live. And yeah, absolutely. But yeah, CE, thank you so much. CE tunes in. Like I said, I have a radio show here in Los Angeles. If you are in LA, I'm on 102.3 KJLH really early in the morning. You can also download the app, the KJLH app, and like CE does, he's not even here in LA and he listens to the show. I really appreciate it. You can listen from anywhere. And the show is called The Front Page, the KJLH app. The correct app in the App Store is like a red and black app. I think there's a fake app in there that's like yellow or something. That's not the right one. So yeah, download the KJLH app if you want to hear me every day. I'm on the radio at a station that is owned by Stevie Wonder, who I got to hang out with a couple of days ago. Occasionally we get to hang out with Stevie. So yeah, a lot of fringe benefits. So yay, Mark. Mark's going to come on live. Okay, we'll have to figure out what a topic is. So yeah, stay tuned. Hit the what is it called? The notification bell on my profile so that you know when I go live. And if you want to follow CE, he's right here. You can follow him. I don't know that CE posts. Do you post, CE?
I have on TikTok. I have just a few videos. It's mostly music.
He plays incredible piano and organ.
Yeah.
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 So thank you, CE, for joining me.
Thank you for the invitation. This invitation. We are very proud of you, Dara, and everything you're doing. And I say it all the time. Everything lovely happens to Dara because she gets to do stuff that we're just like, yes. So
I did
anytime
go to an event with Dick Van Dyke and meet him and say hi. So I got to speak to him.
That's incredible. And I don't care. It's fine. It's great. It's fine. It's great.
That is the loveliest thing I think that has ever happened to me. So yeah, I will agree with that part of it. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. I really appreciate that.
Yes.
Good to you and Liz. Okay.
Amazing.
Thank you, CE, for being with us. Hope you all learned something about the whites with our representative of the white coalition, the Ginger Coalition today. Thank you for representing all gingers.
Oh, Lord. It's a lot of weight. A lot of heaviness.
Okay, you guys. Hopefully I'll go live again soon, but follow me on the other platforms, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Threads. Follow me elsewhere because TikTok is not showing y'all my stuff. So follow me elsewhere if you're not seeing my stuff. And really glad to have you guys. Thank you all for participating. Everybody's just been wonderful.
All right.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye.